That bracelet belonged to me. The words left Emily Carter's mouth before she could stop them, soft enough to be mistaken for a breath, yet sharp enough to freeze every conversation at table 12. A silver child's bracelet rested against the dark hardwood floor of Harbor House, its tiny clasp open, its polished surface catching the amber light from the chandeliers above. Jonathan Hale had just pulled his phone from the pocket of his ivory blazer when the bracelet slipped out with it. He looked down. So did Emily. Around them, Boston Harbor glittered beyond the restaurant's tall windows, and the room carried the polished hum of a private fundraising dinner for Hale Biomedical. Crystal glasses. Quiet laughter. Men speaking in careful numbers. Women wearing expressions trained for cameras. Emily moved first. Her wine-red apron brushed her knees as she crouched beside the chair. She picked up the bracelet with the care of someone handling something breakable, though it was not the metal that made her fingers tremble. It was the engraving inside. Lily and Carter. For one suspended second, the name seemed to erase the room. Emily heard only the muted pulse in her ears and the faint clink of a spoon against porcelain somewhere behind her. Jonathan extended his hand. "Give it to me." His voice was controlled, but not calm. Emily looked up at him. He was 45, broad-shouldered, silver beginning at his temples, his pale shirt open at the collar beneath the ivory blazer. The confidence on his face had changed. Not vanished. Tightened. "Where did you get this?" she asked. A few guests turned toward them. Jonathan's jaw hardened. "That is not your concern." Emily placed the bracelet in his palm, but her fingers did not release it immediately. "The name inside is Lily and Carter." His eyes locked on hers. "I know the name. It was mine." The sentence passed between them with no raised voice, no dramatic gesture, yet the table went silent. Jonathan pulled the bracelet free. "You are mistaken. My birth certificate said Lily and Carter before it was changed." His expression did not move, but something in his eyes did. A small fracture. A memory striking from the inside. "Changed to what?" "Emily Sarah Carter. When I was 2. Jonathan stared at her as though she had stepped out of a room he had locked years ago. One of the investors shifted in his chair. A woman near the window lowered her champagne glass without drinking. Emily became aware of every detail at once, the folded white napkin in Jonathan's lap, the untouched coffee by his elbow, the faint scrape of his thumb against the bracelet's edge. "Who told you that?" he asked. "My mother." "Your mother's name?" Emily swallowed. "Sarah Carter." The color drained from Jonathan's face so gradually that no one else might have noticed. Emily did. She had spent years watching people before they spoke. It was one of the quiet skills no guest ever expected from a waitress. Jonathan closed his hand around the bracelet. "Sarah Carter was not your mother." Emily held his gaze. "Then why did she raise me?" His breathing changed. "Just once." Then he looked toward the other guests, as if remembering the room, the donors, the cameras waiting beyond the private dining doors. "This conversation is over." Emily stood. Her white shirt was still crisp. Her apron was still tied perfectly. Only her hands betrayed her, one thumb pressing against the side of her index finger to keep it steady. "Maybe for you," she said. "But I have seen that name before." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "Where?" Emily looked at the bracelet hidden in his fist. "On the first page of my life." Jonathan Hale left Harbor House before the dessert course was served. He offered no explanation to the donors, no apology to the investors, and no glance toward Emily as he crossed the private dining room. His hand remained closed around the bracelet until the elevator doors shut behind him. Emily finished her shift because routine was the only thing keeping her upright. She cleared plates. Refilled water glasses. Folded linen napkins into exact squares. Every time someone said her name, she heard another one beneath it. Lily and Carter. By 11:30, the restaurant had emptied, and Boston Harbor had become a black sheet broken by scattered lights. Emily changed out of her wine-red apron but kept her white shirt on beneath her coat. She took the train to her apartment in South Boston, climbed 3 narrow flights of stairs, and locked the door behind her. The box was where it had always been, pushed beneath the bottom shelf of her bedroom closet. Sarah Carter had called it the important box. Emily had opened it only twice since Sarah died. Both times, grief had made the contents feel less like answers and more like trespassing. She carried it to the kitchen table and lifted the lid. Inside were tax records, school photographs, a hospital wristband with faded blue lettering, and a yellow envelope marked with Emily's name in Sarah's careful handwriting. At the bottom lay 2 copies of the same birth record. The first listed Lillian Carter, born at Massachusetts Children's Hospital on October 7. The second listed Emily Sarah Carter, born at the same hospital on the same date. The document numbers differed by only 1 digit. Emily stared at them until the printed lines began to blur. She had always believed the change was simple. Sarah once told her that Lily had been a name chosen before circumstances changed, and Emily was the name that felt like home. At 7 years old, that explanation had been enough. At 31, it sounded like a door closed gently in her face. Across the city, Jonathan entered the library of his Beacon Hill townhouse and went directly to a locked cabinet behind the bookshelves. He removed a leather file marked Lily Hale. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Inside were photographs of a dark-haired toddler at the public garden, a hospital discharge summary, and a certified birth certificate. Lily and Hale. Born October 7 at Massachusetts Children's Hospital. Jonathan set the bracelet beside the page. He had carried it for 18 years, though no one knew. It had been returned to him in a sealed hospital envelope after his daughter was declared dead. He looked again at the record. The time of birth was 6:42 in the morning. The number at the lower corner ended in 7184. At midnight, his private investigator called. "I found the waitress's original record," the man said. Her first registered name was Lillian Carter. Jonathan gripped the edge of the desk. Date of birth? October 7. Hospital? There was a pause. Massachusetts Children's. Jonathan looked at his daughter's certificate. Record number? The investigator read it slowly. 7185. Jonathan said nothing. 2 certificates. Same date. Same hospital. Consecutive numbers. 1 child declared dead. Another renamed before her 3rd birthday. The following morning, Emily was standing outside the city records office when a black sedan stopped at the curb. Jonathan stepped out in the same ivory blazer, though he looked as if he had not slept. He held a folder in one hand and the bracelet in the other. Emily raised her own envelope. Neither greeted the other. Jonathan looked at the papers she carried. "You have one too." Emily studied his face. "One what?" He opened the folder and turned the certificate toward her. Her eyes moved across the page. Same birthday. Same hospital. 1 digit apart. The traffic behind them seemed to fade. Jonathan's voice dropped. "Either one of these records is false, or someone changed the identity of a child." Emily looked at the bracelet resting in his palm. "Which child?" Jonathan met her eyes. For the first time since the restaurant, there was no authority in his expression. Only fear. "That is what I came to find out." Emily did not get into the sedan. She stood on the sidewalk outside the records office with the morning wind moving a loose strand of brown hair across her cheek. Jonathan held the passenger door open for several seconds, then understood that command would not work here. He closed it. "There is a private conference room inside," Emily said. "Public building. Cameras. Staff nearby." Jonathan looked at her as if measuring the distance between caution and accusation. "You think I am dangerous?" "I think you have money, lawyers, and a reason to control what happens next." The answer landed without heat. That made it harder to dismiss. 10 minutes later, they sat across from each other beneath fluorescent lights in a narrow municipal meeting room. Between them lay 2 birth certificates, 1 bracelet, and 31 years of missing explanation. Jonathan opened a second folder. I had your background checked last night. Emily's eyes lifted. Of course you did. I needed to know whether this was planned. By whom? By you. By someone using you. She leaned back. Her white shirt was plain beneath her dark coat, but she carried herself with the same steady posture she used while balancing a tray through crowded tables. And what did your investigator find? Jonathan hesitated. Sarah Carter was not listed as your biological mother. Emily looked at the papers, not at him. The room seemed to contract around the hum of the ceiling vent. That is wrong. She became your legal guardian when you were 2 years old. She was my mother. I am not questioning what she was to you. You just reduced her to a filing date. Jonathan lowered his voice. I am telling you what the records say. Emily folded her hands beneath the table so he would not see them tighten. Sarah had packed school lunches, worked double shifts, sat beside hospital beds, and taught her how to remove coffee stains with cold water before they set. A government line could not make that life smaller. Jonathan slid a photograph across the table. It showed a toddler sitting on a blanket in the Boston Public Garden. Dark brown hair. Round cheeks. A pale scar curving beneath the left side of her chin. Emily stopped breathing for a moment. Her own scar had faded, but it was still there. Sarah had said it came from falling against a kitchen stool before Emily could remember. That is Lily, Jonathan said. My daughter. Emily touched the edge of her chin without thinking. Jonathan saw it. His eyes changed. You have the same mark. Many people have scars. In the same place? That does not make me your child. No. It does not. He said the words carefully, but hope had already entered the room, and both of them distrusted it. Emily pushed the photograph back. What happened to her? Jonathan stared at the child in the picture. She had a heart condition. She spent months in and out of Massachusetts Children's. One night, I was told there had been complications. By the time I arrived, they said she was gone. You did not see her? His silence answered first. My mother handled the arrangements. The hospital advised against viewing because of the procedures. Emily's expression hardened. And you accepted that? I was 27. I had just taken control of the company. My father had died 6 months earlier. I trusted the people around me. That is not the same as trusting the truth. Jonathan absorbed the sentence. Before he could respond, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and his face tightened. Daniel Mercer. Your attorney? My family attorney. Jonathan answered on speaker. Daniel's voice came smooth and immediate. Jonathan, do not discuss medical records with the woman. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to testing. I am on my way. Emily looked at Jonathan. How does he know I am here? Jonathan did not answer. On the phone, Daniel continued. This is likely an extortion attempt. Keep the bracelet secure. Emily stood and gathered her documents. There it is. Jonathan ended the call. Wait. Your lawyer decided who I am before meeting me. Daniel has protected my family for 25 years. Emily placed the original certificate inside her envelope. Maybe that is the problem. She reached the door, then stopped. One more thing. Sarah kept photographs from every year of my childhood. There are none from before I turned 2. Jonathan remained seated, the bracelet beside his hand. What are you saying? Emily looked back at him. I am saying someone gave me a new name, a new mother, and a new beginning. The question is whether Sarah hid me from you, or saved me from the people you trusted. Daniel Mercer arrived at Harbor House shortly after 3 that afternoon, when the dining room was still empty and the harbor light lay pale across the polished tables. Emily was arranging silverware for the evening shift when the host approached and said a gentleman was waiting in the private lounge. She recognized Daniel before he introduced himself. Dark tailored suit. Silver hair. Calm eyes that seemed practiced at turning discomfort into procedure. He did not offer his hand. "Miss Carter," he said, placing a leather briefcase on the table between them. "I believe we can resolve this quietly." Emily remained standing. Her white shirt was buttoned neatly at the collar, and her wine-red apron was tied at her waist. "Resolve what?" Daniel opened the case and removed a thin document. "A misunderstanding involving Mr. Hale and a painful family history. You called me an extortionist before you met me. I said the situation had the appearance of one." "That sounds cleaner." Daniel ignored the remark. He slid the document toward her. "This is a confidentiality agreement. In exchange for your signature, Mr. Hale's family office is prepared to provide $250,000. Emily did not touch the paper. For staying quiet? For avoiding unnecessary harm. To whom? Daniel's expression barely changed. To everyone involved. Emily looked at the blank signature line. "You knew my name before Jonathan told you. I have access to his security reports. You also knew about the bracelet. Jonathan contacted me." "No, he did not." Daniel's eyes sharpened by a fraction. Emily continued. "He looked surprised when you called." "Not informed." "Surprised." For the first time, Daniel leaned back. "You are making assumptions. Then explain why you told him not to agree to testing before anyone mentioned a test." Silence settled between them. Beyond the lounge doors, a dishwasher rolled a cart across the kitchen floor. Daniel closed the folder. "You are not equipped to understand the legal consequences of this." Emily's voice stayed level. "That sentence has probably worked on many people. Miss Carter, take the offer. Build a better life. Do not attach yourself to a grieving man because a childhood document contains a familiar name." Emily untied her apron, folded it once, and placed it beside the agreement. "My life does not become better because you pay me to doubt it." She turned toward the door. Daniel rose too quickly, catching the edge of his briefcase. A sealed envelope slipped from an inner pocket and landed near Emily's shoe. He reached for it, but she had already seen the typed line through the clear address window. Massachusetts Children's Hospital. Pediatric transfer authorization. Daniel took the envelope and held it against his chest. "That is privileged material." Emily looked at him. "Then why did you bring it to meet a waitress?" The lounge door opened behind them. Jonathan stood there in his ivory blazer, his face unreadable. He had heard enough to understand the shape of the room. "Give her the document," he said. Daniel turned. "Jonathan, this is not the place." "Give it to her. You are reacting emotionally." Jonathan stepped closer. "I spent 18 years believing my daughter was dead. I am finished reacting the way you prefer." Daniel held the envelope for another second, then placed it on the table. Jonathan opened it. Inside was a copy of a hospital transfer form dated 2 days after Lily Hale had supposedly died. The patient name had been partially redacted. The destination was listed only as a private pediatric residence outside the city. At the bottom were 2 signatures. Margaret Hale. Daniel Mercer. Beneath them, in smaller typed letters, was a special instruction: child transferred under Carter identity. Emily felt the room tilt without moving. Jonathan read the line twice. Then a third time. "You signed this," he said. Daniel's voice lowered. "I followed instructions meant to protect the family." Emily looked at the attorney. "Which family?" Daniel did not answer. Jonathan folded the document with precise, shaking hands. For the first time, Emily saw fear leave his face and become something colder. Not rage. Recognition. The kind that arrives when a man finally understands that the people who guarded every door were also the ones who kept the truth outside. Jonathan did not call security. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at Daniel Mercer and said, "Leave the document." Daniel placed the transfer form on the table, but his hand stayed over it for 1 second too long. "You do not understand what your mother was trying to prevent," he said. Jonathan's expression did not change. "Then I will ask her myself." Daniel glanced at Emily, as if she were the complication rather than the evidence. "This can still be handled privately." Emily picked up her folded apron. "That is what created this." Daniel left through the side entrance without another word. 10 minutes later, Jonathan and Emily were in his sedan heading toward Beacon Hill. Neither spoke until the restaurant disappeared behind them. Boston moved past the windows in gray stone, wet pavement, and late afternoon traffic. Jonathan held the transfer form across his knees. "The private residence listed here belonged to my family," he said. "It was closed years ago." Emily looked at the address. "What was it?" "A townhouse used for medical recovery. My mother believed hospitals attracted attention." "And you never knew Lily was taken there?" "I was told the building was empty." His answer sounded thin even to him. The townhouse stood on a quiet street behind an iron gate, 4 stories of red brick and shuttered windows. Jonathan unlocked the front door with a key from his family archive. Dust softened the entryway. White sheets covered the furniture. The air held the stillness of a place abandoned too carefully. Emily stepped inside and felt something move beneath memory. Not an image. A rhythm. 3 slow notes from a piano. A clock striking once. The scent of lemon polish. She stopped near the staircase. Jonathan noticed. "What is it?" "I had been here." "You could not remember being 2 years old." "I did not say I remembered." She touched the banister. The wood was smooth beneath her palm. Her body knew where the staircase curved before her eyes followed it. She climbed to the 2nd floor. Jonathan remained a few steps behind, silent now, afraid that speaking might break whatever was guiding her. At the end of the hall stood a narrow white door secured with an old brass lock. Emily reached beneath the nearby window ledge and found a small iron key taped to the underside. Jonathan stared at it. "How did you know?" "I did not." The key turned. Inside was a child's room left almost untouched. Pale blue walls. A small bed. A wooden music box on the dresser. A paper height chart marked with dates. Emily walked toward the closet without looking anywhere else. On the inside panel were faint pencil lines and one tiny handprint in faded purple paint. Beside it, someone had written Lily, age 2. Emily placed her palm over the mark. The size no longer matched. The shape did. Jonathan stood in the doorway, unable to move. Emily opened the music box. 3 notes played. Then 3 more. Her breath caught. Sarah used to hum that melody while washing dishes, never with words, always softly, as if afraid someone might hear. Beneath the velvet lining was another silver bracelet, smaller than the one Jonathan carried. Inside were the initials SC and a date matching Emily's birthday. A folded note lay beneath it. Jonathan unfolded the paper. The handwriting was Sarah's. "If she ever finds this room, tell her I did not take her from love. I took her from fear." Emily read the sentence twice. Fear of what? Jonathan looked toward the hall, where the old house held its silence. "My mother." A floorboard creaked behind them. Margaret Hale stood at the top of the staircase in a dark wool coat, one hand resting on the banister. She was 70 now, elegant, composed, and pale beneath the afternoon light. Her eyes moved from Jonathan to Emily, then to the bracelet in Emily's hand. "You should not have come here," she said. Emily closed her fingers around the silver band. "That is what people say when a locked room starts telling the truth." Margaret Hale did not enter the room. She remained at the top of the staircase, framed by the narrow hallway and the fading light behind her. Jonathan stepped between her and Emily, though Emily had not asked him to. "You knew this room was still here," he said. Margaret's gaze rested on the open music box. "Some rooms should remain closed." "Why?" "Because memory is not the same as truth." Emily held the silver bracelet in her palm. "Then tell us the truth." Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Her face carried no surprise now. Only the exhaustion of someone who had spent decades protecting the same decision. "Sarah Carter worked in the pediatric wing when Lily was born," she said. "She was assigned to your care." Jonathan's voice sharpened. "You told me Sarah was a nurse who became unstable after Lily died. That was easier for you to accept." "Easier than what?" Margaret finally stepped into the room. Her shoes made no sound against the old carpet. "Sarah was not only your daughter's nurse." Emily's fingers tightened around the bracelet. Margaret continued. "She was Lily's mother." The words did not echo. They settled. Heavy. Final. Jonathan stared at his mother as though the familiar lines of her face had become a language he could no longer read. "You told me Lily's mother wanted nothing to do with us." Sarah was 24. She had no money, no family influence, and no understanding of what it meant to raise a medically fragile child. "So you decided for her." "I protected the child." Emily looked toward the faded handprint on the closet wall. "By erasing her mother?" Margaret's composure thinned. "By creating stability." Jonathan stepped closer. "You made me believe Sarah abandoned us." Margaret's eyes hardened. "You were about to inherit a company that employed thousands of people. Your father was gone. The board was watching. A public custody dispute with a hospital nurse would have damaged everything. Everything except the truth." Margaret looked away. That small movement said more than denial could have. Emily opened Sarah's note again. "What happened when I became sick?" Margaret drew a slow breath. "Your condition required months of treatment." Sarah kept visiting the hospital. She challenged every decision. She threatened to petition the court. "Because I was her daughter," Emily said. "Because she was emotional." "No," Jonathan said quietly. "Because you had taken her child." Margaret's expression changed then, not into guilt, but into irritation at losing control of the story. "When the board learned about Lily's prognosis, they began discussing your fitness to lead. Daniel proposed a private care arrangement. The official record would show that the child had not survived. Lily would be transferred under another identity and raised outside public attention." Jonathan's face went still. "You declared my living daughter dead to protect a board vote. To protect your future. You buried my past." Emily's eyes stayed on Margaret. "And Sarah?" "She found out about the transfer. She entered the residence before the placement was completed and left with the child." Margaret glanced at the second bracelet. "She used the Carter identity and disappeared." Emily's voice softened, but not with forgiveness. "She did not steal me. She violated an order. She took back the daughter you had hidden from her." Margaret looked toward Jonathan for support and found none. "Years later, Daniel located them," she said. "Sarah agreed to remain silent in exchange for legal guardianship and financial assistance." Emily shook her head. "She worked double shifts. We lived above a laundromat until I was 12. There was no financial assistance." Margaret's silence widened. Jonathan understood first. "Daniel kept the money." "I do not know what Daniel did with every payment." "But you never checked." Margaret straightened her coat. "The arrangement kept everyone safe." Emily looked around the abandoned room, at the covered bed, the hidden key, the note beneath the music box. Safe people do not have to hide proof beneath velvet. Jonathan removed his phone and called his chief legal officer. "Freeze Daniel's access to every Hale account, archive, and trust. Preserve all records. No deletions." Margaret's eyes flashed. You are choosing a stranger over your family. Jonathan looked at Emily. She still wore her white shirt from work. Her wine-red apron was folded over one arm. Nothing about her demanded a place in his world, yet the room had begun to rearrange itself around her truth. No, he said. I am choosing the daughter you made into a stranger. Margaret left the townhouse without another word. The front door closed below them, and the sound traveled through the old building like the end of an era. Jonathan remained beside the child's bed, his phone still in his hand, while Emily stood near the closet with Sarah's note folded against her palm. Neither knew what to call the silence between them. Father and daughter were words that belonged to other people's lives. For now, they were simply two adults standing inside a room built from decisions made without them. Jonathan's chief legal officer called back within minutes. Daniel's access had been suspended. The family trust records were being preserved. A private laboratory could complete a court-admissible relationship test within 48 hours if both parties consented. Jonathan looked at Emily. I will do it. She did not answer immediately. I need more than a result, she said. I need to know what happened to Sarah. We will find everything. Not your people finding what protects you. Her voice remained quiet. Independent counsel. Independent records review. Copies sent to both of us at the same time. Jonathan nodded. Agreed. The test was conducted that evening at a medical office in Back Bay. Emily watched the technician seal each sample in separate envelopes. Jonathan signed every custody form without rushing. When they stepped outside, rain had begun to fall, soft and cold against the sidewalk. He offered her a ride home. She declined. Emily, he said, stopping her beneath the awning. It was the first time he had used her name without uncertainty. If the test confirms what we think, I do not expect you to become someone else. She studied him. You already had a daughter named Lily. I had a child taken from me. And I had a mother who spent her life afraid. Jonathan lowered his eyes. I know. No, Emily said. You are beginning to know. 2 days later, they met in a neutral conference room at the laboratory. No family attorneys. No Hill executives. Only Emily, Jonathan, and the physician assigned to explain the results. The envelope sat unopened on the table. Jonathan did not touch it. You should open it, he said. Emily slid one finger beneath the seal. The paper made a small tearing sound. She read the first line, then the second. Probability of biological parentage, greater than 99.9%. She placed the page flat between them. Jonathan looked at the number, but his attention moved quickly to her face. There was no triumph there. No sudden belonging. Only grief rearranging itself around a new shape. You are my daughter, he said. Emily's breath caught, though she had expected the words. Biologically. Jonathan accepted the boundary. Biologically. The physician left them alone. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Emily reached into her bag and removed one more item from Sarah's box, a sealed letter addressed to Jonathan Hale. She had found it beneath the birth records the night before. I did not open this, she said. Jonathan took the letter with both hands. Sarah's handwriting crossed the front. He unfolded it slowly. The letter was dated 29 years earlier. Jonathan read in silence until his shoulders lowered. Sarah had written that she never wanted money, status, or revenge. She wanted her daughter to live without being treated as a threat to someone else's future. She wrote that Lily had started answering to Emily because it was the first name no one had used to control her. At the bottom, one sentence had been underlined. If she ever finds you, do not ask her to return to the life that erased us. Ask her what kind of life she wants now. Jonathan set the letter down. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. What kind of life do you want? Emily looked through the conference room window at the ordinary Boston traffic moving below. One where my mother's name is not buried under yours. Then we uncover it. Publicly? Jonathan knew what the answer would cost. Investors. Board confidence. The Hale name. The illusion of a family that had always acted with honor. He looked at Sarah's letter again. Publicly. Emily nodded once. That was not forgiveness. It was the first evidence that he understood the price of truth. Jonathan announced the press conference the next morning. By noon, every major business outlet in Boston had requested access, along with local stations, hospital representatives, and members of the Hale Biomedical Board. His advisors urged delay. The board asked for a private investigation first. Margaret sent one message through her attorney: "Think about what this will do to the family." Jonathan read it once, then deleted it. Emily arrived at Hale Biomedical headquarters wearing the same white button-up shirt she wore at Harbor House and a dark coat over her wine-red apron. She had come directly from an early shift. Jonathan met her in the lobby beneath a wall displaying decades of company achievements. "You do not have to stand beside me," he said. "I know. You also do not have to speak." "I know that too." He looked at the apron still tied at her waist. "You came from work. I did not want anyone thinking I had already stepped into your life." Jonathan understood. The press room was full when they entered. Cameras turned first toward him, then toward Emily. A murmur moved across the room. Jonathan approached the podium alone. His ivory blazer looked almost too bright beneath the lights. For several seconds, he said nothing. The silence was not weakness. It was the weight of choosing words that could no longer be taken back. "For 18 years, I believed my daughter had died in childhood," he began. That belief was false. The room changed. Reporters lowered their prepared questions. "My mother, Margaret Hale, and our longtime family attorney, Daniel Mercer, participated in concealing my daughter's survival and transferring her under another identity. Records were altered. Financial arrangements were hidden. A young mother named Sarah Carter was stripped of her place in her child's life, then forced to disappear in order to protect that child." Emily stood near the side wall, her hands still, her expression unreadable. Jonathan continued. "That child grew up as Emily Carter. She is here today. She is also my biological daughter." Cameras swung toward her. She did not step forward. Jonathan raised one hand, stopping the questions before they began. "She does not owe the public a statement. She does not owe my family forgiveness. She does not owe me a new name." His voice tightened only once. "What she is owed is the truth." He announced that Margaret had been removed from every leadership and trustee position connected to the Hale Family Foundation. Daniel's records had been turned over to independent counsel and the appropriate authorities. Hale Biomedical would fund a review of historical patient transfers, guardianship arrangements, and charitable payments connected to the family, but the investigation would not report to Jonathan or the board. Then he stepped away from the podium. Reporters called questions across the room. Was Emily seeking inheritance? Would she join the company? Would she change her name? Jonathan did not answer for her. Emily had nearly reached the exit when one question stopped her. "Miss Carter, do you believe Mr. Hale should compensate you?" She turned slowly. The room quieted. "Money can repay a debt," she said. "It cannot correct a stolen identity." Her voice was calm, trained by years of speaking across crowded dining rooms without demanding attention. "I am not asking to inherit a company. I am asking for Sarah Carter's name to be restored to every record where it was erased, dismissed, or replaced." A reporter asked whether she would take the Hale name. Emily looked at Jonathan. He did not move. "No," she said. "Emily Carter is the name my mother gave me when she finally had the power to choose something for me." After the conference, Jonathan found her alone in a quiet hallway overlooking the Charles River. He offered her a folder containing a trust, company shares, and a position at the family foundation. Emily did not open it. "You are trying to give me back what was taken," he said. you cannot give back 31 years. Then tell me what I can do. She looked through the glass at the winter light on the water. Build something that helps people find the records powerful families think they can bury. Jonathan closed the folder. Independent from me? Completely. And your mother's name? Emily turned toward him. First. Jonathan nodded. First. She untied the wine-red apron and folded it over her arm. For the first time, he did not see a waitress standing in his building. He saw the woman his family had spent decades trying not to name. 6 months later, the former Hale residence on Beacon Hill opened its doors again. The locked child's room was no longer hidden behind dust and silence. The townhouse had been restored as the Sarah Carter Center for Family Records, an independent nonprofit that helped adults recover missing adoption files, medical histories, and guardianship documents. No Hale name appeared above the entrance. That had been Emily's first condition. The second was that no donor could influence a case. The third was that every person seeking records would receive the same attention, whether they arrived in a town car or after a double shift on the subway. Jonathan agreed to all three before the first wall was painted. The investigation into Daniel Mercer uncovered diverted trust payments, altered legal filings, and years of correspondence showing how carefully Sarah had been pressured into silence. He was removed from every Hale account and faced a formal legal review. Margaret withdrew from public life after independent trustees assumed control of the family foundation. Jonathan did not defend her actions, but he did not turn the truth into a performance of punishment. He released the records, corrected the official history, and allowed the consequences to belong to the people responsible. Hale Biomedical lost contracts during the investigation. Several board members resigned. Jonathan remained, but only after accepting independent oversight and surrendering his authority over the family foundation. He had spent most of his life believing control was proof of strength. Now he signed documents that limited his own power. On opening morning, Emily stood near the center's front desk in a white button-up shirt. Her wine-red apron was folded inside a glass display with Sarah's old hospital identification card, the second silver bracelet, and the letter that had changed everything. The display did not describe Sarah as a nurse who interfered with a powerful family. It named her as a mother who protected her child when no institution would. Former foster children, social workers, medical archivists, and families filled the rooms. Some came carrying folders. Others carried only names remembered from childhood. Emily greeted each person without ceremony. She had not left Harbor House completely. She still worked 2 evening shifts each week, partly because she loved the rhythm and partly because she refused to let wealth decide which parts of her life mattered. Jonathan arrived without security and waited near the back of the crowd. He wore his ivory blazer, but no one moved aside for him. He did not ask them to. When the short ceremony ended, he approached the display and looked at the bracelet that had once rested in his pocket. "I thought I was keeping the last thing that belonged to my daughter," he said. Emily stood beside him. "You were keeping the first thing that could lead you back to her." Jonathan looked at the engraved name. "Do you ever wish you had kept it?" "The name?" "Lily." Emily considered the question. Outside, church bells marked 10 o'clock, and sunlight crossed the old floorboards where Margaret had once stood guarding the past. "Lily was the child they tried to control," Emily said. "Emily was the life my mother gave me." Jonathan nodded. "Then Emily it is." He had never called her anything else after the press conference. That mattered more than she had expected. A little girl entered the center holding her grandmother's hand and clutching a worn envelope against her coat. Emily walked toward them. Jonathan remained by the display, understanding that being her father did not place him at the center of her work. It only gave him the responsibility to protect the space she had created. Later, after the visitors had gone, Emily found him carrying chairs into storage. "You know we have staff for that," she said. "I know." "Then why are you doing it?" He set down the final chair. "Because staying should mean helping." Emily studied him, then pulled out one chair and placed it beside her own. He sat only after she did. Between them rested Sarah's letter, no longer hidden, no longer feared. Blood had explained how they were connected. Truth had decided whether they could begin.